Hey everybody, today I am going to be doing a Q&A because I have just reached 17,000 subscribers. I would like to thank everybody who watches regularly. You guys are great. I appreciate a lot of the kindness and a lot of the criticisms as well. All of that is really important to me and I do take note of it for sure. But yeah, no, I took a lot of questions on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that. So I'm going to answer them. I'm not even going to try to do the names or anything because I always pronounce them incorrectly. So I'm just going to put them below as I answer the questions. And as usual, I have not really prepared this very well. So I'm going to do it, fairly off the cuff and hope that it comes out okay. First question is, are you in any way critical of feminism in the 21st century? If you mean critical as in I hate it, then yeah, I should say, I don't hate feminism. No, of course, I'm all for feminism and I would consider myself a feminist. I don't like 21st century feminism. I don't like new wave feminism because to me, it's not really feminism or what it stands for. It's to me more of a vindictive sort of movement where it's based around kind of villainizing somebody and glorifying yourself a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time, and it feels, like it's forcing some sort of political agenda down people's throat, and thus it divides us even more because of that. To me, new wave feminism is, I always give a perfect example. It's like if a girl is walking and a man opens the door for her and she's like, how dare you open a door for me? I am an independent woman. I don't need your help. I don't need a man. And it's like, bitch, you're not a suffragette. He's just trying to be nice to you. It's just gone so overboard to me. And of course, there are a lot of things that I'm really happy about. I'm happy that a lot of men that are complete pigs and terrible people and have done terrible things, I'm so glad that they're getting their comeuppance, as it were. I'm very happy to see people being put behind bars and things like that and being judged very harshly. I'm thinking, of course, of Harvey Weinstein. Huge breakthrough, and that was very important to me, as a woman who's experienced a lot of those things myself. But overall, I look at the movement as a way for a lot of women to, I may have just said, it's a way to kind of villainize men as a collective rather than just certain individuals, and then glorifying themselves. It's a lot of times it feels like it's more for attention, more for personal gain, and there's a lot of terrible men out there, but not all of them are that way, and it's really unfair to those individuals. There are a lot of women that are just as bad in a lot of ways. There are women that are abusive and manipulative and terrible in their own ways, and they don't deserve a pass for that. And I feel like it's led us to a world that is more tense and more divided because it doesn't go with what feminism should be, in its natural definition, which is to bring equality. No, it feels more like a way for women to finally gain all this power and control over men. And to me, that kind of doesn't make much sense. I mean, I think, to an extent, it is cool, to have some sort of dominance in certain aspects, and the power dynamic can be exciting between men and women. But at the same time, I think a lot of women don't want to admit that, submission to masculine dominance is a primal instinct in us and something that is interesting and that we like and that we're drawn to, and to completely dismiss that is to dismiss what it means to be human. And we see a lot of this through political leaders or movie stars as an example. I think of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote where she says something to the effect of, I won't stop until there are all women on the Supreme Court, because there have already been all men. And I kind of think to myself, I don't want an entirely female Supreme Court. I would like to have a mix of both. I mean, I think that that's only fair, and that's how it should be. I don't think the future should be female, as all of these shirts tend to promote. I think it should be both sexes working together as one. That's the feminism that I stand for. Hence why, those shirts, I don't like them. So I bought a shirt that's a cheeky, it's meant to be cheeky, where it says the future is female ejaculation. Because now that's a movement I can get behind. Thoughts on video games as an art form. Video games and technology progresses substantially every year, and I think the potential for video games to become the new cinema, the future of storytelling, to be quite likely, perhaps even replacing film altogether. And I think that in some instances, for sure, you're right. I agree with you in the sense that I think that video games and that kind of virtual reality sort of thing where you're more in control of what's going on, I think is definitely going to be a big thing, the future. And I think that it's starting to merge with the idea of what is cinematic. I'm not a big gamer by any means, but I've, through boyfriends and people I've dated, I've watched them play video games, and I played myself, and I played a lot as a child. And I have to say, I mean, after taking a long break from it and returning to it as an adult, it's astounding where video games are now. And yes, they do. They're almost like films. I mean, they're even getting big stars, and it's like a real ensemble with a real story, and it's just so, epic in scope, and it's so cinematic. And we see it becoming more and more like that. I think probably the first time I ever really saw it as being really cinematic and really like a film was The Last of Us, which I played, I don't know, years ago. And, I was impressed with it. It's not my favorite, but I will say that, I think it really does have a really nice arc, and there are a lot of really very impressive things about it. And it's a very emotional sort of game. And that kind of changed my perspective on it. I remember when Roger Ebert wrote that article years ago where he talked about how video games could never be art. And I don't like that article. I find that it's, very dismissive and ignorant in a lot of ways, because it absolutely can be art. And, like a game that I thought was really impressive in that sense, where I thought, wow, yeah, video games absolutely can be art. The first time I really saw that for myself, I mean, of course, it can be art to whoever sees it in that way. But for me, it was playing Stanley's Parable, which is a really, it examines the very act of what it means to play a video game. And, when I watch movies, my favorite movies are the ones that examine filmmaking as a manipulative device and, standing outside of it and being very self-aware. And with video games, I feel the same way. And that game I thought was just so intelligently built. But I do think that there will always be a place for a type of medium where you're more the voyeur, where you're watching it rather than taking part in the act. I think there will always be a place for that. It may not be, the thing that everybody's doing. It may not be as commercially accessible, but I think it will still be there. In the same way that theater is still very accessible to the public. People still go to theater productions all the time. And, I think that there will be a place for that when it comes to film as well. But yes, I do think you're right. A lot of films, especially, I've talked about Gaspar Noé so much, and I apologize for that. But, I just watched Climax again about a week ago, and I talked about how that film to me is so innovative, and it pushes the idea of what cinema can be and where it can go. And I think he really has a grasp on the future of it, because it does feel so immersive, and it follows people, and it all feels like it's one shot. It does feel like a video game. So yeah, I guess that's the answer to your question. A very long-winded answer. Why do you think audiences go for fast-paced films and art house movies go unseen? Because film, as it's developed and progressed over the years, has been as an entertainment medium. And, a lot of people see it as an escape. Totally understandable. They want an escape from their lives, and they want to kind of turn their brain off and just enjoy something. And the way you do that typically is by watching movies that are really big and flashy and quick. Things are happening really fast, and tends to be more on the surface, not too hard to figure out. And, it is fine. I get it. People need a break sometimes. That's not what I enjoy, but, I'm not everyone. I also think art house movies, people are afraid of them. I think a lot of times people feel like insecure in their intelligence or whatever when it comes to them. Because I've noticed a lot of times, anytime I want to show somebody a movie, they'll be like, oh, I don't think I'm smart enough to understand that. Like, oh, that's going to be too difficult. I don't know what it's supposed to mean. And I instantly hate that response, because it's like, what do you mean? What is it supposed to be? It's whatever you want it to be, however you feel. There's no right or wrong answer, I don't think, especially in the really great art house films. So yeah, I wish people didn't look at it that way and dismiss it as some lofty thing, because I think there's a lot of films out there that people would relate to if they would just be more open-minded to it. Next question, do you work out? Yes, I do. I've always been pretty active throughout my life. I was a dancer for a long time, and Now I mainly run. I do a lot of core strength workouts, and even just in terms of the things I enjoy when I'm not working out, they tend to be more active things, physical sorts of things. I like being outdoors. So lots of things I can do outdoors, hiking and, all that kind of stuff. Working out is so important, especially in this time, you should work on yourself because it really will improve yourself mentally. And you feel very balanced, especially when you're, when your core is solid, you kind of feel that balance throughout your life. And it's also just healthy for you. And I've always been very disciplined about it. And I'm not disciplined about a lot of things, but that for sure I am. Are you happy? No, but I'm getting there. And I feel happier than I have in a long time. So I guess that's a good thing. If you were a movie, which one would you be? I'm going to go with like a trifecta here because I don't think I can just do one movie. So I'll say Mulholland Drive, The Red Shoes, and Climax, again, because I just saw it, so it's fresh in my mind. I think if you look at all of those films, both on metaphorical levels and even literal levels in terms of the story, I think in each of them, you really get a good grasp of kind of who I am as a person. More fucked up, Ralphie killing a pregnant Tracy or Polly Walnut snuffing an old lady to death. Spoiler alert. That's a Sopranos question because that's my favorite show and I'm obsessed with it. I would say, they're both horrible. Of course, they're both horrible, but the first one, Ralphie killing Tracy, that was just depicted in a much darker way as well. But yeah, that was one of the more fucked up moments of the show. I'd love to hear about your figure skating. How did you start? How long have you done it? I guess is what you're asking. No one ever asks me that, so thank you. If you follow my social media, particularly Twitter and Instagram, I'm kind of a crazy figure skating fan and kind of an encyclopedia of figure skating knowledge, really. I don't know, it's always been something that I've been really passionate about. I've always just been drawn to it and enthralled by it ever since I was a kid, partially because I danced for a long time, and there is a sort of a dance aspect to figure skating, though that is certainly not all of it or not even close. But that's probably what got me into it from the beginning, where the pageantry of it, the idea of designing a program where, it's the most of any sort of sport. It's the one where you really have to tell a story and there needs to be an arc. But within that arc, there are all of these tricks you have to implement and they need to flow and be very cohesive. And that is so hard to do. I think it is one of the hardest sports in existence. But I do not skate. That's one misconception. A lot of people think that I must do it because I know so much about it. But no, I don't. I'm terrible at skating. But, if I go to a local rink, I can tell you, what you're doing on your axle takeoff and why it's incorrect. I can tell you about your toe loop and your spiral and all of that. But while I'm doing that, I am gripping onto the rail because I'm like the worst skater of all time, completely uncoordinated. It's such a unique sport because it's the line is quite blurry when it comes to how do you grade something that's supposed to evoke emotion, as well as be technical, and how do you keep that balanced, and what does that mean? So there's a lot of controversy there, but there's a lot to argue about. And I actually enjoy how technical it's become. I know a lot of people don't. It's much less accessible to the public, but for me, I'm finding it really interesting and really fascinating seeing all of these innovative tricks being performed. Of all the disciplines, men's figure skating to me is the most interesting. To me, it feels just naturally the most competitive and the most athletic. But yeah, it's really important to me and something I obsess a little too hard over. And I'll be honest with you, I probably know more about skating than I do film. No joke. You're given the chance to sit in on the making of any film in history for a month. What film and why? That's so hard. I will say this. It's hard because I love all kinds of film and I'm a big film history buff. Everything, I go all the way back to 1895 and the Lumiere brothers when it comes to, how much I've studied film over time. And so there's so many to pick from. I would probably go with a really old one where, they don't have documentary footage of the shooting, or the behind the scenes and all of that information is lost. Because with a lot of the current films, we have that, I could say Mulholland Drive, but if you watch the Criterion Collection, they have a whole documentary like Fly on the Wall, you know, what it was like, and you see, you know, David Lynch working with all of the actors and so on. So I would go with a more historical film. I'd probably go with, just because it's been on my mind, Orson Welles' Magnificent Ambersons, just off the top of my head, because that film is one of the great tragedies, of course, one of the most unrealized films. A couple reels were taken from it. The ending was completely changed. It's a mess of a film, but Welles, you know, the beginning of it is so incredible, and we never really got to see the version that Welles intended. And that's heartbreaking. So I would love to be a fly on the wall there, see how he worked with the actors, see what filmmaking was like at the time, and see some of the footage that was never shown. That would be such an honor, an incredible honor. And Orson Welles, of course, is one of my favorite filmmakers and a fascinating character. Will you ever review another Alejandro Jodorowsky movie? Absolutely. Yeah, I will. I love him, so I'll get to it eventually. Just don't know when at this point. Favorite use of diegetic music in a film? There's so many. Like, there's too many, and there's too many films I know about that fit under that category. But, you know, when I think off the top of my head, I think Rear Window is a big one, and I think it's, you know, it was very different for Hitchcock, and I love the way it uses just diegetic sound, not just music, but, you know, all of that to build the tension slowly. It's a very unique film in that way, and it feels much more like immersive and realistic. So I applaud him for doing that. And just because I just watched it and reviewed it, Night of the Hunter, they use music in such an interesting way. Music is a huge part of the film, you know, for all kinds of reasons, and I think that it does it really in an incredibly haunting but spiritual sort of way. Are there any films that have made you reconsider and reevaluate your place in the world in a spiritual sense? Ikiru was that film for me. That's a good choice. I mean, yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think of one that probably most recently would have been, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago or something, when I saw House of Tolerance, which is a film by Bertrand Bonillo. I named that as my favorite film of the decade, as in 2010 to 2019. That film that really hit hard and really was tough for me to experience, because it was so close to how I feel my experience has been as a young woman, and just kind of, you know, how society's projected onto you, and, you know, how you're shaped by the environment that you're in a toxic sense. And so, yeah, when I watched it, I was also going through a lot of things at the time. And it really made me sit there and think I need to make better choices, because I have the ability to change things if I truly want to, as hard as it can be at times. So that would be the one. And it's not like I relish in comparing my life to any of those girls at all, but yeah, there's a vulnerability there, and it caught me off guard for certain. Your favorite Doors album, or if that's too easy, your favorite live version of The End. I mean, I guess they kind of fit under the same category, so I'll count that as one. But yeah, The Doors, my favorite is, honestly, it's probably their first album. I feel like it's the most cohesive, the most well-rounded, and it has some of my favorite tracks on it of all time. I also really like Morrison Hotel. It's just so bluesy and cool, and it does it. I think they took that genre of music and like to its full potential through that particular album. I actually think that LA Woman is kind of overrated. I mean, yeah, it's got some great tracks on it. I know people consider that to be like their masterpiece, but not me. There was a time when I was really into Soft Parade, but I honestly, now that I look at it, though it's got some great moments on it for sure, it's really messy, and it's very ambitious, and they're not quite reining in that ambition correctly. So a lot of it feels disjointed. In terms of live versions, there was one in, I want to say 1967, and it was like a Toronto concert they did. I really like that version of The End. It's very hypnotic, and I don't know, something about it, I feel like it captures the song the best. What do you consider your strongest quality? Probably that I consider myself to be very real. I don't mince words. I am pretty direct and to the point. And very unadorned in that way and very simple. I don't need a lot. As long as I have honesty and integrity and I feel that, you know, I'm being real and the other person is being real, then I tend to be pretty accepting of that and okay with that. I'm not a person that gets fussy over little kind of surface level things. I like to get to the core of things. You know, I'm that way when I look at film, but I'm that way in all aspects of life, in relationships in particular. And I wish, honestly, yeah, I wish more people were like that. I see a lot of superficiality out there, and I see, you know, a lack of perceptiveness in that sense. And yeah, I think we need more of that in the world. And, you know, I have so many flaws, so many flaws, but if there's one thing that I have always been happy about when it comes to myself, that would be it. But yeah, so we'll end on that one. That's a good one to end on. So yeah, that's the Q&A, and thank you everybody for listening, and thank you for asking. There were some really good questions. Honestly, there were some I didn't know how to answer. Like they were difficult, and I had to really rack my brain for them. But yeah, you know, maybe I'll do more of these, and you know, continue to ask if you'd like, and maybe I'll do topic videos on occasion. But again, thank you everybody for watching and for sharing your passion for film and for art. I really appreciate it. In this time, I feel like we really need that sense of community. So let's keep it going. But anyway, that is my video. Thank you all for listening. Again, if you'd like to follow any of my social media, it's down there. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you want to. Catch you next time.